Hello everyone, back tuning in to today's second video of the GWV Sunday Round-Up for today's second video. So as always on a Sunday, we've got your eclectic mix of Bismarck. We're going to look at solar activity, sea surface temperature, anomalies, ENSO. I've got news on the QBO, the Arctic Oscillation, North Atlantic Oscillation, and of course weather for the next week to 10 days as well. It's going to be jam-packed and hope you find it interesting for your Sunday afternoon viewing pleasure. Just to say that the first video up today was the 8th Summer Analogues update. So that's looking at summers following April's with CETs between 8.8 I should say, and 9.2. And that video will be placed on the summer updates forecast page with a written summary going over everything that we discussed in the video sometime this evening. Lot to get into Sunday Round-Up today, so I think better get on with it. We're going to start off by having a look at solar activity. So this is the solar disk on our side of this today from solarham.net. We have got one sunspot region over here in the far western side of the solar disk as we look at it, or on the far left-hand side, I suppose, as we're looking at it. Solar activity is at low levels and is expected to become very low over the next 3 days, reports Solarham. This is the GWV Sunday Round-Up Solar Activity Tracker, updated by a good friend James Ackrill. Haven't seen this for a couple of weeks since we did Solar Sunday. So you can see that solar activity is at low levels. Obviously, we are around solar minimum. We did get a bit of an uptick in solar activity late in March and through April. That was enough to actually lift the trend lines, which are the thick green and thick red lines. That was enough to lift those up from being basically on the floor of the charts at the end of February. So for a while we've had a little bit of a tick up. These are very minor sunspots, I have to say. So we are, even with the trends ticking up, we are at a very low level. But we are beginning to move the trend lines back downwards again now, actually. The thick green and thick red lines are beginning to move back downwards. I expect as we get to solar minimum, we will find those trend lines getting back to the floor of the chart, similar to where it was at the end of February and the beginning of March. Just there. So we're probably around 6-9 months, something like that, away from true solar minimum. True solar minimum will probably occur towards the end of this year or possibly into the early part of 2020. The reason we look at solar activity is that there is an increased chance of northern blocking in the winter when you're around or possibly just after solar minimum. So a lot of our colder winters tend to occur sometime around or just after solar minimum. But it's not a guarantee of anything because every winter is unique to itself. So even say if we was at solar minimum but we had a super El Nino setting up, then that super El Nino would override everything else and we would probably come away with a very mild winter. So it's not a guarantee of anything, but it does load the dice a little bit in favour of a slightly colder and more blocked winter. We should keep an eye on the GWV Sunday Round-Up solar activity tracker over the next few weeks and months. Sea surface temperature anomalies next. So this is how sea surface temperature anomalies in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans were looking last week. We did last week's GWV Sunday Round-Up. We've got the ENSO region, of course, just there. That's the equatorial Pacific Ocean with Peru just there and Indonesia over here. Then we've got the Northern Pacific Ocean up there. And then we've got the Atlantic Ocean, or the Northern Atlantic Ocean, over there. They are our 3 specific areas of interest. So that's how things were looking last week when we did last week's Sunday Round-Up. This is the very latest. So dealing with the ENSO region first of all, there's been very little change. We still have this weak signature for El Nino in the equatorial Pacific Ocean. Sea surface temperature anomalies have possibly lifted up a little bit, increased a little bit over towards this eastern side, over towards the Peruvian side. Although, bear in mind, that's quite shallow waters just there. So it tends to be the deeper waters of the central equatorial Pacific that we focus on primarily, although other parts of the ENSO region are important too. The deeper waters take longer to change. They're less likely to change with changing weather patterns, for example, whereas in the shallow waters over towards Peru, then you can get quite rapid increases and decreases in temperature with the weather. Anyway, we still have a weak signature of El Nino continuing through the ENSO region, and maybe a little bit of strengthening over towards the eastern portion of the Equatorial Pacific. Further north in the northern Pacific Ocean, again, let's go back to last week. That's how things were looking last week. This is the very latest from the 2nd of May. Very little change, again, quite stable up there. So very little change over there. In the Northern Atlantic Ocean, things have got a bit colder, actually, in the North Atlantic. So that's how the sea surface temperature anomalies looked last week, 25th of April. This is the latest chart for the 2nd of May. You can see this blue area has expanded up in the northern part of the Atlantic Ocean. So cold and average sea surface temperature anomalies now covering much of the northern Atlantic, to be honest, between around 40 and 60 degrees north in particular, and then going up towards South Green. This has been a semi-permanent feature over the past few years. It does look as though we have entered the cold phase of the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation. So the AMO changes on a cyclical basis. It goes through warm and cold phases every sort of 25 to 30 years. We have been in a prolonged warm phase of the AMO since around 1995 when we switched into the warm AMO. So it's running out of steam now. It is running out of time, the warm AMO. We are shifting into the cold AMO, and I think that's what's going on here with these colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies that we are seeing continuously now in this northern part of the Atlantic Ocean. Of course, you will still get years that deviate, so some years will still show a warm sea surface temperature anomaly in the North Atlantic. Just as when we was in the warm AMO, we did have the occasional year that was a lot colder in the North Atlantic. But overall, it does look as though we are shifting now into the cold phase of the AMO. Further southwards in the tropical Atlantic, so that situation at the moment, again, quite close to average really for sea surface temperature anomalies down there. If we go back to last week, you can see that, again, very little change, everything looking quite stable in the tropical Atlantic. It's really in the northern Atlantic, but those sea surface temperature anomalies have cooled down a little bit over the past week. We'll keep an eye on them in the next few weeks. Talking of ENSO, this is how the SOI is looking. This is the Southern Oscillation Index. This is from the Queensland Government, part of Bureau of Meteorology in Australia. So the SOI is just an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state in the southern Pacific Ocean. It's not driving anything, it just tells you what the atmosphere is doing. When the SOI is in its negative phase, then the atmospheric setup is going to be reflective of El Nino. When the SOI is in its positive phase, then the atmospheric setup is going to be reflective of La Nina, of a cold event. It's basically measuring the air pressures between Darwin and Tahiti. So, for example, if we go down just here, we can see that on the 20th of April, just there, we had an air pressure of 1,010.44 millibars in Darwin and 1,010.50 millibars in Tahiti. That was enough to bring us out with a very negative SOI number of minus 17.67. So those sort of air pressures are reflective of an El Nino type condition. Well, as we scroll up, we can see that the very latest is that we did go a bit positive with the SOI actually into the opening days of May. So that's the 1st of May just there. That's the 2nd of May just there. Plus 9.06 and plus 11.74. That's an atmospheric state that's reflective of a La Nina type setup in the southern Pacific Ocean. Where we are for the 3rd, 4th and 5th is that we are close to neutral really, 0.02, 0.48, 0.25, neither reflective of an El Nino or a La Nina type setup. It does appear that the El Nino is weakening, continuing to weaken as we go through the spring, as you would expect, but it's quite a slow old process to weaken this El Nino down. It was a very weak El Nino anyway, but SOI kind of like swinging between El Nino and La Nina type phases at the moment. Very indicative really of what you get at this time of year when you see the unravelling of either El Nino or La Nina. You're returning back to ENSO neutral through the spring. This is how Eurasian snow cover is looking. So if I want to just throw this in, this is from the National Ice Centre. So snow cover is receding now from western and southern Russia. It's receding back into northern Russia and Siberia. And in fact, even in Siberia, there are a few patches now that are beginning to appear without snow cover. So obviously this is going to all disappear over the next few weeks and months. By the time we get through to June, July, we're going to find that the whole of Eurasia is snow-free, except over mountainous areas. Snow cover also receding back into the north of Scandinavia. You can see there is a little bit of snow cover over the Alps, so of course, as you would expect, so mountainous areas will keep their snow cover into the summer. Otherwise, most places will see that snow cover disappearing. As far as Arctic sea ice is concerned, where we've got all of this yellow just here, well, the Arctic melt season is about to begin for the summer, so we shall see where that goes over the next few months. QBO, quasi-biennial oscillation, next. So we've got the latest number in for the QBO for April 2018. These are all of the QBOs go right way back to 1948 with this, but it is quite unreliable at the end of the 40s and the beginning of the 1950s. So the more reliable phase is kind of like from the mid-1950s onwards. For example, in 1954, we have these negative numbers showing that year, every month that year actually is an easterly QBO month, and that continues into the early part of 1955 too, before in March 1955 there's a reversal to positive. And then we go into a westerly phase of the QBO, and that carries us through the rest of the months of March 1955 until we arrive at 1956, and then we begin to go back into the easterly phase of the QBO. So we're waxing and waning from easterly to westerly on a month-by-month and year-by-year basis. This should always be very regular. It should be kind of like a pulse or a heartbeat that is continuous, constantly going from westerly to easterly, and then back to westerly, and then back to easterly again. Did go awry in 2015. We had the failure of the easterly QBO. That was quite interesting. So from 2014 2015, we were in an easterly QBO. And then we go into westerly QBO through the second half of 2015, and that takes us into early 2016. We should have had a reversal into an easterly QBO through the middle of 2016, but it failed, and we saw a continuation really of the westerly QBO that went on right way through 2016 and continued into 2017 even as well. Very, very prolonged westerly QBO phase. Well, we went into an easterly QBO finally in the second half of 2017. That's that year just there. You see, we begin 2017 with the continuing westerly QBO that started back in 2015. That was still going on into the first months of 2017. But through the summer of 2017, we reversed that and go into an easterly QBO, sort of like go back to normal, really. And then that easterly QBO strengthening and becoming really, really strong, actually, as we get into the summer of 2018. One of the strongest recorded easterly QBOs. But, as ever, that reverses, and we go into the westerly QBO at the end of 2018. The very latest is that we are in a strengthening westerly QBO phase, so that's 2019 just there. Let's get rid of those lines. That's 2019 just there, and you see we've got these positive numbers, +9, +9, +11, and the very latest for April 2019 comes out at 13.36. So during April, we saw a further strengthening of the westerly QBO. And this is going to carry on strengthening probably for the next 2 or 3 months, I would have thought, taking us into the summer with a strengthening westerly QBO. Late summer into the autumn, these months just here, will probably start to show a bit of a weakening of the westerly QBO. And by the end of the year, by the final couple of months of this year, or possibly into the first couple of months of next year, we will see a reversal back into the easterly QBO once again. That's if everything works out as it should do. As I say, this should be very regular. It should be like a pulse that is continuous. So what happened in 2015-16 during the super El Nino that we had during that winter, of course, was very, very unusual. And as far as we know, it had never happened before. But if everything goes to plan, we should shift into the easterly QBO towards the end of this year and into next year. The reason we look at this is primarily something we look at for winter, but it does affect other seasons too. So when you're in an easterly QBO, you are weakening the zonal westerlies. Essentially, this is just measuring the strength of the zonal westerlies. So when the QBO is westerly, when it's positive, you are strengthening those zonal westerlies. But when the QBO is easterly, when it's going to its negative phase, then you are weakening the zonal westerlies. So easterly QBOs in winter tend to coincide with an increased chance of colder, more blocked winters. It's not as straightforward as that, though, because there have been many cold winters in the past that have occurred with a westerly QBO, and many mild winters in the past that have occurred with an easterly QBO. So as ever with the weather, nothing is ever completely straightforward, especially for our part of the world. But we do see an increased risk anyway with an easterly QBO of a colder type winter for the UK and for Europe. This coming winter, if everything works to plan, will be a transitioning west to east QBO winter. This is from the University of Berlin. Again, this is just updated, and it is showing what we know, that we are in this westerly phase of the QBO, this darker area just here. That is showing the westerly phases of the QBOs. The white areas, they are the easterly phases of the QBO. So you can see the easterly QBO that we had through second half of 2017 into 2018. That white area is just there. And then you can see the westerly QBO that we are currently in just here. I suspect before too much longer, probably the next couple of months, we will start to see a white area beginning to appear up here. If you think that this is kind of like the heights within the atmosphere, so we've got 10 HPA up here, that's right at the top of the stratosphere. We've got 100 HPA down there, that's kind of right down on the surface where we are. So these events begin at the top of the atmosphere and then move down the layers of the atmosphere. So always you'll see when you're going into westerly QBO, the first sign of it will be a grey area appearing up here. But when you're in an easterly or going into easterly QBO, the first sign of it will be a white area appearing up here. So I think before very much longer, we will probably see a white area starting to appear up here, and then of course that will descend down through the atmosphere, and eventually by the time we get through to the winter of 2019-20, we will go into an easterly QBO within the boundary layer of the atmosphere that we call the troposphere, where weather is taking place. But at the moment, still, this westerly QBO is strengthening. This is the Arctic Oscillation observed and forecast chart. So again, it's just a measurement of the atmospheric setup. It's not driving anything, it just tells you what the atmosphere is doing. The black line shows where we've been with the Arctic Oscillation. Red line's at the end where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the Arctic Oscillation to go. So we was very positive with the AO, kind of like from sort of early to mid-February into early April. Went through a positive phase of the Arctic Oscillation. This tells us that we had low pressure up over the North Pole. But going negative into the early part of April with the Arctic Oscillation, that's where we are right now, slightly negative. GFS ensembles are forecasting the Arctic Oscillation to stay in its negative phase through to the middle part of May. That's mid to second half of May, just there. So it does look as though we've entered into an extended period of negativity of the AO, actually, and this is indicative of northern blocking. It's going to be sitting within the northern latitudes by the look of it during the first half of May. So AO going into its negative phase. At the same time, the NAO has also entered a negative phase as well. So this is the same idea. The black line shows where we've been with the NAO. the red lines at the end where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the NAO to go. We had a very, very prolonged negative phase of the NAO going right way back to the beginning of the winter. So that's a strengthening of the westerly signal, really, where you've got low pressure up over or around Iceland. You've got high pressure strengthened through the Azores. And you will strengthen the westerly flow, and that will give you a positive NAO. But where we are right now is that we've gone negative. So we started this shifting towards a more negative phase of the NAO through early April, despite that uptick that we had just there. Generally trending downwards through April, and that's continued and accelerated during May. So where we are right now is very negative, actually, with the NAO. I'm not sure how long it's been since we've been this negative, but it must be a really, really long time. And the GFS ensembles are forecasting that we're going to stay in a negative phase of the NAO going through to the middle and even into the second half of May. Yes, the NAO does rise up a little bit, but it doesn't really get back to neutral. So all the time it's on the negative side, just not as negative as it is right now. And possibly even as we get towards the second half of May, this is right at the very end of the GFS ensemble, so it's unreliable, but possibly just signs that it's time to move downwards again. So it does look like we've entered a prolonged sort of negative phase of the NAO now, after being in a very positive phase throughout the whole of the winter and into the first half of the spring as well. Major changes with these indexes are telling us that the atmospheric setup has changed quite fundamentally, both in the Arctic and also in the North Atlantic as well. But we have to wait and see what the upshot of these changes will be. These are the GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. So the red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average for Manchester. We're cold at the moment, of course. We're having a cold May Day bank holiday weekend, and it's going to stay pretty chilly over the next couple of days too. A gradual lift up in temperature through towards the middle of the week, only going closer to average, and then tend to drop again actually at the end of the week and into next weekend. As we get towards the middle part of May, that's this period just here, does look as though we begin to go into a warmer phase then, starting to lift those upper air temperatures up then. But of course that's semi-extended range, so it is unreliable, but it is fairly well supported within the GFS ensembles, you'll see, for the temperatures to begin to lift up around the middle of the month and into the second half of the month. Precipitation wise, quite a bit of rain to come over the next few days. It's going to stay dry really for the rest of the bank holiday weekend, although there will be showers breaking out tomorrow across some parts of the country on bank holiday Monday. But it's not really until we get through to the middle of the coming week that it's going to turn quite unsettled. So quite a bit of rain around midweek, taking us into the second half of the week. But then after that, it looks like we have got a drying trend actually for the middle of the month. So maybe turning warmer and drier with high pressure coming back into the middle of May. We shall see about that. Temperature anomalies from the 5th through to the 13th of May, below average, significantly so for the UK, for Ireland, through most parts of Europe too. So with this negative AO and NAO setup that we are in, northern blocking essentially setup that we are in, which is now also affecting the North Atlantic, which is something that didn't happen back in the winter. It means that we have really plunged temperatures down a lot. So a cold week coming up actually through most parts of Europe, particularly notable at night, of course. Precipitation anomalies close to or a little bit above average, so it generally over the next few days remains cold and unsettled, or cool and unsettled really, through the next few days. Over in America, it's quite a cool scene there as well. Out in the Pacific West, it's a lot warmer, and also in its far southeastern corner, it's a little bit warmer there, but most parts of the states are going to be below average, although the anomaly to average is nowhere near as great as it is across much of Europe in the week ahead, but nevertheless a relatively cool week coming up for much of North America. And precipitation wise, it does vary from state to state, but it's quite dry in the Pacific Northwest where it's warmest. California looks quite wet, interestingly, particularly southern parts of California. And those unsettled conditions look like they're extending into states like Nevada as well, and going down in towards Texas. So in the south of America, it looks quite wet. Northern parts of America may be a bit drier. That's a classic El Nino type pattern, actually, I think, that we're seeing there. Wetter in the southern states, drier in the northern states. That tends to flip around as you have a La Nina. So this is how the GFS come back to home. This is how the GFS is looking for Wednesday. Low pressure's heading in off the Atlantic on Wednesday. That's going to bring cloud and outbreaks of rain too. And that low pressure is right over top of the country as we get through to Thursday. So very unsettled conditions around the middle of the week with a lot of wet weather to come. That low pressure still with us towards the end of the week. And then into next weekend, we start to move that low pressure away to the east. Pull down these cold northerly winds. So that's the drop in temperature that we saw on the ensemble graph to the end of the coming week and into next weekend, pulling back in these cold northerly winds. But at the same time, high pressure is starting to head back in from off the Atlantic, and this high pressure then builds through to the following week. So this is Monday, 13th of May. High pressure is strengthening then across the country. And as we go up to day 10, we are back under high pressure anticyclonic conditions, albeit the high pressure is a blocking feature again. So it's moved northwards and it's sitting between Norway and Iceland and Greenland at 1,040 millibars, pulling back in these east or northeasterly winds. Suffice to say, if this had been January, we would have been looking at another spell of very cold east or northeasterly winds. Into the more extended range, we keep this high pressure blocking to our north. And of course, what tends to happen in summer, as I explain in the videos all the time, is that in summer, when you've got high pressure blocking up here, particularly if it's going towards Greenland, you'll tend to get low pressure setting up underneath it. And that's what is happening with this GFS run. Low pressure is beginning to develop underneath that blocking area of high pressure. It's starting to undercut it, and so it's turning increasingly showering. And potentially we finish up turning increasingly wet, actually, with low pressure coming back right over top of the country all the time. The blocking continues around Greenland. You really don't want to see, if you want a warm, dry summer, you don't want to see northern blocking. A lot of our coldest and wettest summers tend to be associated with northern blocking, with high pressure sitting in the northern latitudes, typically around Greenland. And because there's always more energy in the atmosphere, it's a warmer time of year, so you've got a lot more energy available, that will start to generate low pressure underneath a blocking area of high pressure. We're still in May, so it's not worth worrying about the summer, but certainly by the time you get through to June, July, August, we want to be seeing, if you want dry, warm weather anyway in summer, which a lot of people don't. A lot of people actually want it cool and wet in the summer. But if you do want dry and warm weather in the summer, you want to see this blocking area of high pressure disappearing from Greenland and lowering the heights up there, which then allows the Azores high to strengthen and ridge in from the southwest. This is the GFS parallel run. Again, we start off on Tuesday looking rather showery. Actually, let's go through to there. So that's for Wednesday. Low pressure's heading in off the Atlantic. That's bringing showers or longer spells of rain with it through the middle part of the week. It'll be very unsettled. Those showers, longer spells of rain take us into the end of the week as well. Pulling back those northerly winds at the end of the week and into next weekend before the low pressure exits away to the east and we build this high pressure in from the west. So next weekend will settle down, but it's not going to be a heat wave. It'll probably be quite cool next weekend due to the position of that high pressure. And then we extend into the following week where we start to lift those heights back northwards again, setting them up somewhere between Greenland and Norway with low pressure to our east that continues to pull in the winds from a cool north or northeasterly direction. In a more extended range with a parallel GFS run, again, similarly operational, really. Looks like it is turning rather more unsettled again, still with a bit of a northern blocking signal up towards Greenland. ECMWF, again, here comes a low pressure on Wednesday. That's going to give England and Wales a real soaking for Wednesday. That low pressure still with us into Thursday, starting to move away and weaken into next weekend as this ridge builds out to our west. But we're pulling back those cold northerly winds as well, or chilly northerly winds next weekend. Then high pressure takes over through the following week. This takes us to day 10, which is Wednesday the 5th of May. And we still have this blocking area of high pressure sitting to our north. It's pulling in these east winds. So we go back to dry conditions for the middle of May. Temperatures probably lift up a little bit, but nights could still be quite chilly. The main thing is the interesting weather pattern with this northern blocking signal. You do tend to get more block conditions in May. It's one of the things that is indicative of the month of May, that you tend to get a lot of high pressure to the north and also over Scandinavia. So it's not all that unusual, but we'll see where it goes. If that high pressure continues to stick around Greenland as we get through into the end of May and into the summer, then that's not very good news for our summer prospects, but that's a long way off. Finally, just have a look at CFS V2. So these are 500 millibar heights broken down into weekly periods. The first weekly period will take us from the 5th to the 11th of May. The coming week has the blocking area of high pressure over Greenland, and low pressure is sitting across northern and western parts of Europe and out into the Atlantic too. So it's cool and unsettled. We're bringing in a wind from a north or northeasterly direction, and it's likely to be quite cool and unsettled. But all change then into week 2. This is the 12th to the 18th of May as we strengthen high pressure to our southwest. We start to build up the ridge from the Azores. High low pressure gets pushed out into the middle of the Atlantic, and the jet stream returns northwards as well. So that's a warmer, drier week that we've got in week 2. Week 3 has the high pressure, the above average height sitting just to our northeast, but also extending a ridge down through the west of Europe. So that would bring the wind up from a southerly southeasterly direction. That should be mainly dry and quite warm, therefore. And then week 4 looking like this. It's a block signal. It's the 26th of May to the 1st day of June, first day of summer 2019, with the high pressure sitting between Iceland and Norway. So it's mainly dry. The Atlantic is blocked off. We're bringing in the wind from an easterly direction. You would expect a lot of dry weather to be associated with that, and I would have thought relatively warm conditions too. However, if that high pressure goes any further north, and let's say it becomes centred somewhere around there, then watch out for this trough of low pressure towards Newfoundland start to roll in and undercut. Always a risk with northern blocking. This is how the CFS is forecasting June today. So this is 700 millibar height anomaly for June, going for above average heights to be to the north of us, but also extending kind of right to our east as well. So a lot of ridging going on there, which, despite northern blocking signal, possibly does place us in a sort of warmish east-southeasterly type flow. The temperature anomaly for June with the CFS today is forecast to be milder than average, not just for the UK, but for most parts of Europe as well, despite what is extensive northern blocking. And precipitation-wise, CFS is going for average precipitation. Doesn't really have a signal at the moment for precipitation. But again, just going back to that 700 millibar height anomaly, that is an extensive blocking signal that it's got there towards Greenland. And despite the fact that it's managing somehow to come away with a mild and average temperature anomaly, and you get that level of northern blocking centred around Greenland in June, that will normally, most times, that would be a cool and unsettled, potentially very wet signal for the UK and for Western Europe, as you would tend to expect a trough of low pressure, trough of below average heights even, to develop underneath it. The CFS isn't showing that at all at the moment. But again, it is quite concerning to see that CFS is going so strongly at the moment with extensive northern blocking up towards Greenland. So we shall see. It's all a long way off. We're only at the beginning of May. We shall see how that's looking as we get through to the end of the month. And then finally, if you're enjoying the videos at the moment, please can you consider becoming a patron for GWV. We've got 60 patrons so far. Hello, and big thank you to all of our patrons for GWV. If you would like to become a patron, for GWV, and all you need to do is come to the GWV Patreon page. You sign up for a Patreon account, and then you can pledge an ongoing monthly donation to GWV. It can be anything from $1 a month upwards, and by doing that, you become a patron for GWV. You are helping us to pay for our website and keep the content online. So a big thank you to all of GWV's patrons, and yeah, just a big thank you to all of you for doing that, and hope you're enjoying the videos that we're doing at GWV at the moment. Alternatively, you can become a PayPal donor. So if you'd like to give a one-off donation to GWV, then all you need to do is come to the GWV PayPal page, sign into your PayPal account, and then you can send over a one-off donation to GWV. Whether you do it through PayPal or through Patreon, you'll get a mention in the videos. We'll say thank you very much for your donation and for either becoming a donor or becoming a patron for GWV. We are primarily ads funded and will be remaining so. We're not going behind paywalls or anything like that. It's just an added revenue stream as the revenue we get from ads is declining year on year for various reasons. There are a lot of reasons why that's happening. It's primarily down to ad blockers, but there are other reasons too. So we have to look for renewed revenue streams. This has been very popular since we started it in June. So yeah, just a big thank you to all of our patrons and all of our donors. Right, so that's it for the Sunday Roundup for today. Don't forget to check out the 8th Analogues update for the summer of 2019. That video will be placed on the summer updates page later on today with a written summary going over everything that we discuss in the video. It's Bank Holiday Monday tomorrow, so I'll be taking the day off, having a bit of a rest, but we don't stop at GWV. There will be a video, and that video is going to be looking at the summer of 2018. So it picks up directly where we left off with Easter Monday's historic video, which was looking at the winter of 2017-18, including the beasts from the east. We left off on the final day of March with that video. We will pick it up straight after on the first day of April, and we'll run you through the summer of 2018. Last summer was a very, very hot summer indeed, and there'll be some memorable charts in that one I can show you about. I've already recorded it, and I think it'll be a decent watch, so that'll be coming up for you tomorrow on your May Day. Bank holiday Monday, and that's it for now. So thanks so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday afternoon, but that's all for now, and thanks for watching.